In room 451, the day began unusually for Roger. His wife Karen woke him up, and they made love. In room 450, Matt and Jenny were doing the same thing. Matt and Jenny went to breakfast. This was the first time she allowed Matt to plan an annual vacation. That was usually her prerogative, but she had to admit he did a pretty good job. She loved the hotel, the beach was wonderful, and she didn't see a single sign that said we serve English food. Matt was also pleased everything was going according to plan. As they approached the dining room, they met Roger and Karen. Roger and Matt greeted each other as usual. "Good morning, Dr. Patterson," Matt said. "Good morning, Dr. Evans." Their friendship has always been unusual. The teachers never understood her. Even in grammar school, Roger was extremely confident and extroverted, while Matt was an introvert and a nerd. Even their family backgrounds were opposite. Roger was an only child, his parents were both doctors, and the family was quite wealthy. Matt was the second eldest in a family of 4 children. His father died in an industrial accident. The mother used the compensation to pay off the mortgage and struggled to support the family on her secretary's salary. Matt tried to help by working at the supermarket 2 evenings a week and all day on Saturdays. Little did anyone realize that even in school, Roger and Matt had a symbiotic relationship. Matt, a crammer, always had a lot of notes and could explain in simple words everything Roger needed to know. He was good at math, something Roger had difficulty with. Roger, of course, was a brilliant speaker. When there were group projects, they were always together. Matt did most of the work and Roger presented the project to the class with ease. Even outside of school, they remained friends, which was helpful for the introverted Matt when it came to meeting girls. Since many girls went in pairs, it helped if there were 2 boys. Roger could charm anyone, so Matt let him do the talking. Of course, this usually meant Matt got a less attractive girlfriend, but that didn't bother him. Often the less beautiful girls were kinder or smarter, and he liked that. Sometimes Roger set him up on blind dates. Usually these girls expected to see Roger. Sometimes it worked out, but most of the girls just got really angry. The university separated them. Roger went to Edinburgh to study medicine, and Matt went to Brunel University to study engineering. They saw each other occasionally during the holidays, but both developed new circles of friends. When Matt graduated with honors, he was invited to continue his studies for a PhD. He received a grant to cover the costs, but it was not enough. He did everything he could to make money. This included grading papers and, more importantly, supervising laboratories and classes. It was then, while teaching one of his classes, that he met a beautiful young graduate student studying information and communications technology. When Matt saw Jenny on the verge of tears after one of his classes, he went over to talk to her. She worked as an actuary, but returned to study to gain real experience in it. Matt quickly realized that she was having difficulty with this task. He sat down with her and broke the problem down into smaller, manageable pieces. Matt absolutely refused to do anyone else's work for them, but he was extremely good at showing how the impossible could be achieved. It was the same with Jenny. She relied on him for task after task, and he was more than happy to help. By the end of the semester, they became a couple, and a year after graduation, they got married. Matt still remembered how he felt when she stood next to him in church. She was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. She was gentle, caring, and truly loved him. Nothing could destroy his pride or his sense of great fortune. He had to remind himself that this time he had won her himself. Matt's talents were soon recognized by his employer. He quickly became one of their best problem solvers. His ability to explain complex processes in simple terms drew him into teaching, and from there into writing textbooks. As he developed this aspect of his work, other companies began to hire him to simplify their systems. Matt quickly realized that if his company sold his services, they made much more money from it than he did. Within 5 years of graduating from university, Dr. Matthew Evans became an independent engineering consultant and technical author. His reputation was already sufficient to guarantee a good income. Even the company he left hired him again. When Jenny's company downsized and fired her, he already had a thriving business. When she had difficulty finding another job, Matt encouraged her to stay home, and they began planning a family. When she agreed, Matt was delighted. Now he could spend every day in the company of his beloved wife, and children were soon to appear. But the children never appeared. Roger had a rude awakening at university. He went from being one of the smartest guys in school to being average. His first year was filled with girls and parties. However, Matt wasn't there to help him with material he missed or explain when something wasn't clear. At the end of the first year, if not for the intervention of his parents, Roger would have been kicked out. Over the next 2 years, his behavior improved, but he still struggled to keep up with the program. Only in his 4th year, halfway through the 7-year course, did luck smile on him. He met a pretty young nursing student. At first, he was surprised that he was attracted to her. She was not at all the type he usually liked. She was only 5 feet 2 inches tall and quite broad-shouldered and broad-hipped. She had a sweet face and short blonde hair. But there were 2 things Roger couldn't ignore. Karen had a truly magnificent pair of breasts and a smile that could warm the heart of a dead man. Roger turned on his charm, and she, like the others, succumbed to him. A few days later, they were already a couple, but Roger never managed to completely take over her life as he did with other girls. Karen had a mind of her own. She was determined to do well in school, and nothing, not even Roger, could stop her. Roger felt that he had never fully owned her, and the more he thought about it, the more he tried. He became a monogamist and even began to study harder. Karen graduated a year before Roger and got a job at the local hospital. When Roger completed his training, he took up a position as a junior doctor in the same location. Despite the stressful work hours, they continued their relationship and got married a year later. After 2 years, Roger decided that hospital life was not for him. He retrained to work in general practice, and when a vacancy in a group of doctors opened up in his hometown, he took it. Returning home meant rekindling old friendships, and Matt and Jenny soon found themselves on his patient list. While ordering breakfast, the foursome joked about what they did that morning. When Karen ordered a full breakfast, Roger commented, "Take it easy, old lady. You already ate this morning. You already have enough weight." "That's a little rough, Roger," Matt said. "I had breakfast in bed this morning, and I'm ready again." The 4 friends couldn't help but hear mourning each other's tricks, and everyone laughed together at the comments. Karen decided to change the subject. "So, what were you doing yesterday while Matt and I were exploring the Alhambra?" she asked. "I can't tell you," Jenny smiled. "Yesterday I had time for myself." "What is this time for yourself?" asked Karen. "This is an agreement between Matt and me. I am completely on my own 2 days a week. I am not accountable for my affairs. I am completely free. I don't tell Matt what I did, and he trusts me enough not to ask." "What about Matt?" asked Karen. "Does he also have time for himself?" "If he wants," Jenny said. "So far he has not shown such a desire." "I think you should, Matt. In fact, if I don't have the right to ask what you did yesterday, then I think Matt and I should have some me time today. What do you say to that, Roger?" "Yeah, why not?" he answered. So when they headed back to their rooms after breakfast, they did so with the agreement that Matt and Karen would not report for the day's activities. Jenny put on a bikini and sarong and was ready for the beach. She truly was a beautiful woman with long, slender legs, a cute little ass, and breasts that fit her body perfectly. Standing there in a bikini, she still had the power to make Matt speechless. "I'm going to take a walk on the beach and maybe sunbathe." "What are you going to do today, Matt?" "I can't say," he replied. "Time for yourself, don't forget." "Of course," she smiled and turned, walking out, knowing that he would eventually follow her to the beach. Roger announced that he was going out to buy an English-language newspaper and left Karen to manage it herself. Matt went out onto the balcony with his video camera, and Karen sat on her balcony next door. Matt watched his wife walk along the beach, the sea licking her feet. He handed Karen the binoculars, and they both watched. The camera's zoom feature allowed Matt to see Jenny clearly and admire the sway of her hips as she walked along the beach. Karen and Matt, sitting on their balconies, didn't wait long. Not even a few minutes had passed before they saw Roger appear. He crossed the sand to meet Jenny. When they met, they exchanged a kiss. Karen and Matt looked at each other, nodded, and went back to their rooms. "It looks like you had a good time this morning," Roger said to Jenny. "Yes," she answered. "Matt has always been a great lover." "What, better than me?" asked Roger. "Well, if you must know, yes. He always makes sure I feel good and does it exactly the way I like. He just seems to know what I want at any given moment. So this morning wasn't anything special, huh?" "Well, it's not always as good as it was this morning, but it's always good. This morning was really special, and he really said it would be memorable. So if Matt is so good, why have you been sleeping with me for a year?" asked Roger. "I asked myself this," she said. "I think it was just exciting to do something forbidden and keep it a secret. Plus, you and Karen seem to be having a fun morning too." "Yes," he said. "Karen has always been good in bed, but this morning she outdid herself." "So why have you been sleeping with me for the last year?" "Don't know. I guess I was just restoring the proper order of things." "What do you mean?" she asked. "I always won beautiful girls, and Matt took care of those who were simpler. When I saw him with you, it didn't feel right. I just had to win you over. And now you've done it." "Yes, now I did it, but do you know what I discovered? That most of the time I'd rather be with Karen." Jenny laughed. "Listen to both of us. Here we are, dating on the side when we would both rather be with our spouses." Roger laughed too. "What does that tell you?" he asked. "He says it's time to call it quits," she said. "I think you're right," Roger agreed. They walked a little further along the beach. Then Roger kissed her forehead and they parted ways. By lunchtime, when Matt still had not come for her, Jenny headed back to the hotel. Matt wasn't there. She found Roger relaxing by the pool. "Have you seen Matt?" she asked. "No," he answered, "and neither is Karen. They must have taken advantage of our idea of me time." "Oh, hell," she replied. They had lunch together, then spent the afternoon by the pool. Roger was reading the newspaper, and Jenny alternated between swimming and relaxing in the sun, reading a book. When neither Karen nor Matt returned for dinner, Jenny began to get a little worried. They delayed dinner as long as possible in hopes that their spouses would show up in time to eat together. During dinner, Roger asked Jenny, "How long does me time last?" "All day," she answered. 24 hours. Do you think I could leave you at the hotel at 12 o'clock in the afternoon and go home to bed without raising questions? So we have to wait until breakfast tomorrow to call them and ask where they are." "I'm afraid so." "You don't think they know about us, do you, Roger?" "No. Karen wouldn't think I could do it, and Matt is a good guy. He doesn't have the slightest suspicion. Plus, we were very careful." Roger and Jenny spent the rest of the night waiting at the bar. By midnight, neither Karen nor Matt had shown up. Roger and Jenny went to their separate rooms to sleep. Jenny was already starting to worry. When she woke up alone, she was very worried. She didn't wait any longer and called Matt's cell phone. About 20 seconds later, she heard a bell ring. She followed the sound and found Matt's phone in one of the suitcases. When Roger knocked on the door to escort her to breakfast, it was obvious that he was also very worried. They ate almost nothing at breakfast. However, they made a decision. They needed to get the police involved. The hotel manager helped them contact the police, and by lunchtime, Karen and Matt were reported missing. They realized that the rental car was also missing. Neither Roger nor Jenny could remember the registration number or even the name of the rental company. Matt made all the arrangements for the holiday, and he was not there. Only in the evening did the hotel manager bring them positive news. The police checked all the local hospitals, and neither Karen nor Matt were there. The next day, the story was completely different. The local station sergeant came and accused Roger and Jenny of wasting police time. They put a lot of effort into finding a rental car, and they were successful. It was returned to the rental company's airport parking lot as planned. It was also revealed that Karen and Matt had boarded a flight to Newcastle on the day of the disappearance. Tickets for this flight were purchased in advance. Jenny suddenly felt very ill and ran to the toilet, leaving Roger to explain that they did not know about their partner's plans. When Jenny returned, she was completely pale. "He knows, Roger. Matt knew about everything before we left. I need to go home." "Calm down, Jenny. This is Matt we're talking about. We both know he always does the right thing. He loves you, and he is not a fool. I am sure he will understand everything. Karen is another matter. She won't leave it that easily." Tears rolled down Jenny's face as she sat swaying in place. "We need to go back, Roger. We have serious restoration work to do." They spent the rest of the day trying to find flights back to England. Roger wanted to get to Manchester to pick up his car, but Jenny agreed to whatever flight would get her home faster. By the end of the day, they learned that they were stuck there for 3 more days. Roger also learned that his debit card for his joint account with Karen no longer worked. He paid for the tickets with his credit card. Jenny was right, of course Matt knew. He found out soon after it started. Jenny insisted on her idea of me time. She told him that she needed to feel like she was more than just a wife. She needed time when she didn't have to answer to someone. Somewhat reluctantly, Matt agreed, and things started well. Jenny's friends would come over and casually tell Matt about their adventures, but over time he saw them less and less, so he didn't know what she did with her 2 days of me time each week. Nothing until he made his discovery. He was looking for cash to pay a window cleaner when he looked in Jenny's purse, trying to find her wallet. Instead, he found a mobile phone. Not the one he bought her, but a simple one, nothing special. He checked his contacts and found only one entry labeled me. He found enough cash, paid the window cleaner, and went back to the phone. He wrote down the number labeled I. Then I entered the code to see Jenny's phone number. Switching to his landline, he entered the code to hide the number, then called the number I. The phone was picked up almost as soon as it started ringing. "Hello, beautiful, what happened?" Matt recognized the voice immediately. He had to think quickly to avoid arousing suspicion. He took on an Indian accent and pretended to be a call center employee. "Hello, sir, this is Telecoms Limited. We've noticed that your contract is about to expire, and we'd like to offer you a reduced contract price with a free upgrade to your phone." "Contract?" said Roger. "I don't have a damn contract. This is a prepaid phone." Roger disconnected before Matt could apologize. Matt walked back to his office and sat down with his head in his hands. The eyes filled with tears. His beautiful Jenny was taking pills while they were trying to have a baby, and worst of all, she appeared to be having an affair with his friend Roger. An hour later, Jenny walked into his office and found him with his head in his hands. She asked what happened, and he told her that an old client who was more like a friend had died. She stood there massaging his shoulders for a while until he said he was fine and stood up. Over the course of a few days, Matt realized that while Roger might have been smart to give Jenny a new phone, he couldn't change her habits. One of Jenny's habits that he could never understand was bringing home little soaps from hotel rooms. Every time Matt went to meet clients, he took her with him, and he always found himself washing his hands with hotel soap. Despite the fact that they had not left for a long time, he again found himself washing his hands with hotel soap. He checked the trash can and found a soap wrapper. The wrapper said, "Ramada Jarvis Hotels." Matt was a Marriott man and was sure he had never stayed at one of these hotels. It took him only a few phone calls to find out who supplied and maintained security systems for the chain's nearby hotel. One of the great things about Matt was that he was loved by everyone he dealt with. By the end of the day, he had a promise to receive the front desk camera footage for Tuesdays and Thursdays. The following week, Matt received his first entry. He sat down at the computer and quickly rewound the recording. On Tuesday at 14s and Roger appeared on camera. Matt saw Jenny standing behind Roger, away from the front desk. Matt waited for Roger to sign the logbook and then took a screenshot. He saved the image and then used Photoshop to enlarge the registration book portion of the image. He turned the image and looked at it again. Wow, security cameras are really good these days, he thought. Looking at the enlarged recording, the recording was clearly visible. "Doctor and Mrs. Patterson, with Roger's car registration number next to it. Now he knew for sure, and part of him wanted not to know. The first thing he did was come up with a reason for the trip. He chose Uxbridge to visit some old friends from the university. He told Jenny and, as usual, invited her along. The trip was supposed to last from Monday to Friday, and for the first time Jenny said she didn't want to go. On Monday, as he was getting ready to leave, Matt kissed her tenderly. "I'll call you every evening," he said. What Jenny said next not only hurt him, but also made the pain even worse. "Not on Tuesday and Thursday," she said. "Not on my time for myself." Don't interfere while you're sleeping with him, he thought. Don't interfere with this. Matt was so upset as he slowly drove along the M25 that he almost missed the exit onto the M40. He had to suddenly change lanes across 2 lanes, which caused a lot of anger from other drivers. By 2 p.m., he had checked into the Marriott. Leaving his luggage in his room, he went to Brunel. He felt a little better just walking around the university campus. Most of the memories here were pleasant ones. He decided to stay in places that were frequented by the staff, so he avoided the student bars where he spent so much time with Jenny. He was sitting drinking coffee at the theater bar when a voice behind him said, "Hello, stranger. What are you doing here?" Matt turned to see Jane, one of his friends and confidantes from his college days. They worked on projects together, and she helped him with his doctorate. For a moment, Matt thought they could become more than friends, but then Jenny showed up. Jane ordered coffee and sat down opposite him. They talked about what they had been doing since they last saw each other. Jane was now a lecturer at the university, the first female lecturer in engineering at Brunel. She had just returned from her second stint in industry and was delighted with the experience. Matt shared the same lie he told Jenny about a work meeting nearby. Jane looked at her watch, finished her coffee, and stood up. "I need to go," she said. "Okay," Matt said. "I guess I'll see you." Jane turned to him, paused, then said, "Matt, don't eat alone in a faceless hotel tonight. Come to me. I'll cook us dinner, and we can talk about old times over a glass of wine." "I love it. Thank you." "Fine. I'll pick you up at the Marriott at 7. As she left, Matt couldn't help but think about how things could have turned out differently. Matt called Jenny at 6, told her about his trip, how much he missed her, and told her he loved her. He then talked about having dinner with Jane. Jenny knew about Jane and how well they had been friends in college. During her student years, she was a little jealous of her. "Just behave yourself and remember who you are returning to," she said. After some communication, Jenny stuck the knife back into the wound, unaware that Matt knew. "Just remember not to call tomorrow," she said. He wanted to finish for her. "Because I'll be busy cheating with Roger." Instead, he simply replied, "Don't worry, I remember." Jane arrived on time and Matt was waiting for her in the hall. She was still driving like crazy, with squealing tires and a lot of insults towards other drivers. Her apartment reminded him of his student years, books everywhere and a lot of junk. Matt was surprised to learn that Jane could cook. They had a great dinner, and while they were drinking coffee, Jane asked, "Are you going to tell me what's going on?" "Am I that transparent?" Matt asked. "For me, yes," she said. "I've never seen you so close to tears." "Well, will you admit that you came here for a feeling of security?" Matt broke down and told Jane everything, even about the phone call that evening. Jane just listened and kept his wine glass full. By the time he finished, Matt's tears were streaming. "Matt, I don't know what to say. Your wife and your best friend, you deserve better than them." "You mean I deserve someone like you?" he said. "Although I admit that I have a personal interest, I think you should do something about it. However, that can wait until tomorrow. You need to sleep tonight. Judging by your appearance, you haven't slept for several nights. I have a spare room. I'll make the bed now, and you'll stay here for the night." Whether it was out of relief from the story or for some other reason, that night Matt slept well for the first time since the betrayal was confirmed. Jane called on him twice during the night. At 2 in the morning, she just sat next to the bed, watching him sleep. In the morning, she left to lecture until 11. She left a note asking Matt to wait for her. When she returned, she found Matt cleaning the apartment, the vacuum cleaner running and smelling of coffee. She came up behind him, put her arms around his waist, and hugged him tightly. When Matt turned around, he looked much better than yesterday. "Well," she said, "let's have some coffee and talk about what you're going to do." They sat down with coffee and cookies. Jane couldn't help but sit and stare at him. "So, the way I see it, you have several options, but they are all up to you. If this case ends tomorrow, what will you do? I suspect you'll pretend you don't know and hope it doesn't happen again." "You're probably right," Matt said. "Then, when you leave here, you can continue to collect evidence and choose the time to begin the divorce. This is the hardest option for you because you will have to pretend nothing is happening until you make your move. I know they deserve it, and that's what I would choose, but it's up to you to decide." Matt was silent. "I understand the logic of your words, but unfortunately, this is not just a logical problem, Jane. I still love her. I really still love her." "Matt, love isn't the only thing that matters in marriage. The question is, can you trust her again? If you don't trust, she will reproach you and love will die. I need to think about this, Jane. I can't make a decision now. Can I have dinner with you tonight?" "Of course," she said. That night Matt came to pick up Jane in his Jaguar. She was impressed. "You seem to make a really good living at what you do. This might make what I'm planning tomorrow a little outdated." "That's not true," Matt said. "I decided that all options were open, and if I didn't have a family to take care of, money wasn't a problem." They didn't talk about Matt's problems that night. They had a nice dinner and sat in the hotel bar reminiscing about old times. It was a happy night, and they both drank a little more than they should have. "You drank too much to take me home. Can you call me a taxi?" she said. "You're a taxi," Matt replied, and they both burst out laughing. "No, seriously, Jane, I have 2 beds in my room. You can stay here. No obligations, no consequences." They went up to Matt's room. He insisted that they sleep in separate beds. He wasn't ready to declare his marriage over yet. The next morning, he bought Jane breakfast before taking her to work. She asked him to return at 2 o'clock, and he agreed. Jane's surprise afternoon turned out to be an informal meeting with engineering faculty leaders for a possible job opportunity. Matt was surprised by this. He had never dreamed of teaching. However, everyone else was deadly serious. There was a vacancy coming up the following school year, and everyone thought it was a good fit and had to apply. He was given to understand that this would be decided in advance. "Wait a minute. I make good money as a technical writer and training consultant. Do you expect me to give it all up?" "Oh no, Dr. Evans. Once you have fulfilled your obligations to us, you can do whatever you want. In fact, the more contacts you have with industry, the better for us," said the head of the faculty. Matt agreed to think about it. When he left, Jane was waiting for him. He put his arm around her shoulders, and they left together. That night, they were having dinner at a hotel, and during dinner, a waiter approached Matt and passed him a note. He read it and looked a little embarrassed. "What's happened?" Jane asked. "I forgot to call Jenny," he said. "Then you better do it now." "When I finish this, Jane, she can wait a little longer." Perhaps that's when Matt knew he had made a decision. After he finished the main course, he asked Jane to excuse him while he called Jenny. When he returned, there was a smile on his face. When Jane asked what was funny, he told her that he told Jenny that he thought it was Thursday, time to himself. He also told her that he was having dinner with Jane. Jenny was not happy about this. Matt decided to enjoy his Thursday before returning home on Friday. Almost immediately after returning home, Matt began collecting evidence. Jenny was smart enough to delete the texts on her special phone, but she didn't delete the call history. Each time the engineers came to the Ramada Jarvis, Matt received a DVD of the footage from the front desk camera on Tuesday and Thursday of that week. As winter set in and thoughts of summer vacations began to appear on everyone's minds, Jenny began talking to him about another vacation with Roger and Karen. All this time he was the same old Matt, the reliable Matt who some said was boring. However, in the bedroom he really tried. He noticed that phone calls became less frequent, as did visits to the hotel. By spring, he thought it was time to get Karen involved. His reaction to Karen was not what he expected. He expected denial, that this wasn't really happening, that he had gotten it all wrong. He expected tears, screams, and, "How could he do this to me?" Instead, he got completely mad. Her face turned white, her lips tightened, and she said only 3 words. "This little scoundrel." "Do you have a plan, Matt?" she asked. "Well, I think I know what I want to do and when. I have enough evidence to be sure what's going on. The only thing I don't know is why." "Well, I can tell you why from Roger's point of view," she said. "It's envy, pure and simple. He was always jealous of you, that's what he told me. He couldn't believe how you, despite all the hardships you had to overcome, could do better than him in school. He bragged to me about how he tossed his girls to you when he was done with them. Not because he didn't love you, but just to show that he was better than you. Then we came here, and you had a model wife, and he had me. Oh, I know he tells me he loves my big breasts and wide hips, but I've seen the way he looks at other women, especially Jenny. It's envy, take my word for it." Matt laid out his plan, and Karen agreed to support him. The first plane to Manchester, where Roger left his car, took off on Saturday. Both Roger and Jenny were in it. Roger bought the tickets on his personal credit card. Neither his nor Jenny's debit cards were working anymore. Jenny's eyes were red from all the tears she had shed over the past 3 days. She sat in her chair, fidgeting with her hands. Roger looked at her. "I don't understand. What are you so worried about? I'm telling you, Matt is a good guy and he loves you. Karen is the one who should be worried. She may have to take revenge, and she may do so. We need to know if they suspect or do they have evidence." Jenny started crying again. "Matt wouldn't do it if he wasn't sure," she said. "I think we can assume that he has evidence." She was absolutely right, and they themselves provided the last piece of evidence during their last sex on Tuesday, while Matt and Karen admired the Alhambra. Even when Jenna spread towels on the bed, she was under surveillance. Neither she nor Roger noticed that Matt's laptop was left open on the dressing table. Random blinking of the hard drive indicator also went unnoticed. His motion-detecting camera mounted above the screen showed no signs of activity. Up until this point, Matt had only been able to reveal that they had checked into the hotel together, but this Tuesday they provided the final piece of evidence he needed. "I pray to God you're wrong," Roger said. "You only have to lose your marriage. I could lose everything, but I don't want to lose my marriage. It's better than losing your marriage and the career you spent 7 years studying for." "You still don't understand, right?" said Roger. "You are still my patient. BMA rules say I can make a mistress a patient, but I can't make my patient a mistress. If Karen reports me, my license will be revoked." They didn't say anything else for the rest of the flight. Jenny was still crying when they got off the plane in Manchester. She was still in that state when they reached her front door. Roger carried her bags to the door and waited for her to find her keys. When the key didn't work, the tears started again. Roger tried too, but he couldn't open the door. He went to her car to activate the garage door remote. The remote wasn't there, but he found a postcard on the driver's seat. He handed the card to Jenny. She opened it and froze. A few minutes later, she dropped the card. Roger picked it up. On the front it said, "Good luck in your new home." Inside, Matt wrote, "Try Roger's. I think he has plenty of space." Roger just looked at it and said, "Oh my God, Matt, what have you done?" He hugged Jenny and led her back to his car, then went back to get her suitcases. He drove to his house and let Jenny inside. He sat Jenny down and went to the kitchen to make them both a cup of coffee. While he was looking for cookies, he heard a scream. He rushed back into the living room and found Jenny standing by the fireplace with a piece of paper in her hand. Then he saw another envelope on the mantelpiece. This one was addressed to him. This envelope contained a notice of the start of divorce proceedings. He guessed that Jenny had found the same thing. She still stood there, frozen in shock, looking at the paper. Roger saw that she was in a state of shock. He took her upstairs to the guest room and put her to bed, then called Matt. Roger was surprised when Matt answered the phone. "What the hell are you up to? Do you understand what you are doing to her?" asked Roger. "I think the problem is what you did to her," Matt replied. "Come on, Matt. This isn't your style. The girl loves you. She rejected me before you left. She's done nothing but cry since you left, and now I have to calm her down. What is wrong with you? You're acting like me. Maybe if I had behaved like you before, she wouldn't have left for you." I can imagine you telling her, "Come on, Jenny, it's just fun. Even if old Matt finds out, he'll take you back. That's the kind of person he is." "Oh my God, were you listening to us?" "Oh no, Roger, much worse. I have a video." "What do you want, Matt? I'll give you everything you want. If I don't have it, I'll take it from Mom and Dad." Roger couldn't believe how calm Matt was. He expected Matt to scream and curse, maybe even come and beat him up. Instead, he was deathly calm. "What do I want? Let me think. Yes, that's it. I want my wife to come back to me in the same condition she was in before you took her to bed. Pure, knowing only me since the day we got married. That's what I want. Can you give it to me, Roger? You know very well that I can't. That's why I already gave Karen a DVD of the whole show. I didn't ask why she wanted it, but I think I can guess. So what did I get myself into? Judging by the video, Roger, you really were royally dirty. It's a shame this happened to my wife. Okay, so I'm in trouble. Looks like this is my punishment. I'll have to deal with this. What about Jenny? This girl is broken. She hasn't spoken since she found the divorce papers. What about Jenny? Matt said. She wanted her me time. Now she has enough for 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Damn it, Matt, she loves you. She breaks my heart. How can you say, "What about Jenny," so calmly? She's your wife. What a shame you just remembered this, Roger. As for calmness, I'm not calm. I was numb. That's what waiting at home twice a week does to you, hoping every night that she'll tell you she's sorry, that it was a big mistake, that it's over and will never happen again. Every night that this apology did not come, more and more died. When almost a year had passed, there was nothing left that could hurt. That's where I am now, Roger. I was quietly numb. Have you known for almost a year? Oh yes, Roger, almost from day one. And you didn't say anything all this time? God, you are incredible. And what would it do to say something? Make her come back to me because she got caught. She never left you human. It was me who didn't let go, told her everything you had to tell her. That's what I propose, Roger. If you really think she needs help, then while you can still practice, make sure she gets it. If it costs money, then so be it. It is still deducted from the divorce settlement. So I can't convince you to call off the divorce. For God's sake, man, she loves you. Roger, she'll need a change of clothes. Everything is in her car, but you didn't take it. I'll call a taxi and ask him to wait at your house. I'll drive Jenny's car to your house, throw the keys through the door, then leave in a taxi. Please don't go out, and most importantly, don't let Jenny get out. Matt hung up. Roger had never seen him like this. He could always talk Matt into it, but this was a completely new game, and he didn't know the rules. 10 minutes later, the taxi pulled up to Roger's house, followed shortly after by Jenny's car. Matt got out of Jenny's car, and at that moment Roger heard a noise upstairs. Jenny ran out and almost fell down the stairs. Matt, I love you," she cried. "Matt, please talk to me." Roger stood at the door, and the keys fell to the floor. "Matt, please talk to me." "Oh, please, PojaluYsta," she cried, tears streaming down her face. Then, for the first time, she turned to Roger. "Bastard," she screamed. "You bastard, you said this wouldn't happen. Just for fun, you said. Matt will never know, you said. Matt will be fine, you said. Well, he knows, and he's not okay, and it's not funny. I could kill you, you bastard." She cried on his shoulder before he took her back to her bedroom. Matt's taxigate rode him to his own house. He walked through the door and met Karen, who kissed him on the cheek. "How was it?" she asked. "Not very good," Matt said. Jenny seemed to be in a terrible state, but Roger kept her inside. You have to remember that you never created this problem. They created it by sleeping together. Roger is very worried about what you are going to do. He has something to be afraid of, said Karen. He knew what he was doing and knew the risks. Matt loved to read in bed, and spy novels were his favorite genre. He was sitting in bed, following the adventures of John le Carré's hero, when there was a knock on his sleeping door. Karen stuck her head in the doorway, saw Matt sitting shirtless in bed, and walked into the room. It was almost 1 o'clock in the morning. I see you can't sleep alone either, Matt. I don't know if this is the reason, but no, I haven't slept well since we returned from Spain. Karen sat down on the bed. She was in light robe over a long satin nightgown. You know, my problem is that I miss Roger, that bastard. I don't want him to come back, but now I'm having a hard time getting used to sleeping without him. Matt moved to the edge of the bed. He pulled back the blanket on the other side of the bed and patted the mattress, indicating that Karen could join. Karen took off her robe and got into bed next to Matt. She moved closer to him and laid her head on his shoulder. Matt continued reading. That night they made love. As Karen fell asleep, Matt lay there. He slowly realized that he had no emotional attachment to Karen. He didn't really experience anything. After their sex, he expected a feeling of euphoria. It didn't happen. It wasn't because he didn't find Karen attractive. He had always found her attractive. Of course, she was not a beauty like Jenny, but she radiated a certain warm sexuality. No, Karen wasn't the problem. The problem was him. He just didn't feel the romantic affection for her that he experienced from Jenny. In fact, when he thought about it, he couldn't think of a single person he had an emotional attachment to right now. They slept until 10 in the morning. Karen stood up first and went to get a robe, then headed to the kitchen. By the time Matt came down, she had already made coffee and started frying eggs and bacon. You know, Matt, I could get used to this setup, she said. I think we should stick to the plan, Karen. Besides, your mother is waiting for you. Yes, I know, but after last night, I thought you might want me to stay. Karen, you clearly wanted sex last night, so I gave it to you. It was okay, I hope. Yes, it was fantastic, but that's all it meant to you. Don't make me answer that, Karen. Karen looked disappointed, but accepted the situation. So you want me to go to my mother? Yes, Karen, it will allow you to do what you need to do and put enough distance between you and Roger. They were just loading her suitcases into Matt's car when Jenny's car pulled up. She got out of the car and rushed towards Matt before he could dodge. Matt, please, I love you. Please don't do this. He began to move towards the house. Don't do this, Jenny. You're only making things worse. Karen grabbed Jenny's wrist and tried to hold her back. You probably couldn't wait, right? As soon as he left me, you crawled into his bed. Well, have you already slept together? Anyway, yes, Karen replied. What I don't understand is why you got involved with Roger when you had a husband like him. Suddenly, Jenny realized that Matt was not there. Turning around, she rushed towards the open front door. The first thing she saw was Matt with the phone to his ear. Yes, okay, as soon as possible then. It was Roger, he said. He will come for you. I don't want to go with Roger. I want to stay with you, Matt. I love you. Matt looked into her eyes. Jenny, I don't love you anymore. Now please go away. Jenny's knees gave way, and they both had to support her as they walked her to the car. Roger got behind the wheel and drove her away. Matt drove Karen to the station and then returned to start his life alone. Over the next 3 months, Roger found himself not only divorced, but also summoned to a hearing before the medical council. He admitted to having a sexual relationship with a patient and was removed from the register of medical practitioners. He kept his promise and placed Jenny in a private clinic for treatment. Her depression. Now, unable to practice medicine, he took a job as a medical representative for a pharmaceutical company and moved away. Jenny's lawyer tried to drag out the divorce as long as possible by arguing about the value of the house. He didn't understand why, but Matt wanted to keep the house. He eventually put it up for auction and bought it for about 3/4 of its appraised value. After paying off the mortgage and paying the bills for Jenny's hospital stay, there wasn't much money left. He paid child support for 6 months to give Jenny time to find a job. After receiving an offer to teach at Brunel, Matt rented out his house and moved to Tewksbridge. He began living with Jane, but she soon realized that he was not the same man she knew many years ago. Even a few months ago, there was a sparkle in his eyes. Now he is gone. A few months later, they broke up and Matt moved into his own apartment. His work was his salvation. It brought him into contact with people. The need to be cheerful in front of clients gradually penetrated his psyche. He even started dating, mostly through dating sites. It didn't take him long to sort through the descriptions and determine the type of woman he was looking for. He tried to avoid women who described themselves as bubbly because that usually meant never stops talking. Most of the women he dated were divorcees, and Matt was surprised at how quickly some of them wanted to get him into bed. In this regard, he never failed. After a year of trying to date women selected by various computer programs, he gave up on the idea. He always kept in touch with Karen, and they met up from time to talk about old times. About 2 years after the big breakup, Matt received an invitation. Karen was getting married again, and he was invited to the wedding. He called her to congratulate her and apologize for not being able to come. When she told him that Jenny wasn't invited, he agreed to come. Karen's wedding was a big event. Her husband was a surgeon, and his family was very wealthy. They rented a large hall in a country house. Matt was having fun watching the ladies. One in particular attracted his attention. She was tall, about 173 cm, with long brown hair, a slim waist, and Matt couldn't help but notice how her long dress flowed over her hips and butt. As if she felt his gaze, she turned to face him. Matt smiled nervously and looked away, but not before noticing her blue eyes, high cheekbones, and magnificent breasts. He was pleasantly surprised to find himself sitting across the table from her at dinner. The need for conversation led Matt to ask if she was a friend of the bride or groom. She said her name was Carol, and she worked with Karen. Matt simply said that he was a friend of Karen's ex-husband. When dinner was over, Karen pretended to approach them. Matt noticed that she had lost some weight in her hips, but she still had those gorgeous breasts. She was a beautiful woman. "Ah, Matt, I'm so glad you were able to come, and I see you've already met Carol." "Yeah, we talked a little," Matt replied. "Carol, this is Matt. He is my ex-husband's friend and my friend. Do you remember what I told you about him?" "Oh, that friend," Carol said. They chatted most of the night, and when the evening came to an end, Matt drove Carol home. This was the start of Matt's longest relationship since his divorce. For the first time in a long time, Matt felt like he actually had feelings for this woman. They went everywhere together. Carol took him to art galleries, and he took her to places like the Science Museum. Both were eager to learn from each other and share each other's interests. Looks like it was a match made in heaven. However, as Matt fell in love with Carol, suspicions began to arise. As a nurse, she often had irregular shifts and long hours to cover the absence of colleagues. Although Matt accepted this situation, it did not reduce his suspicions. To compound the problem, when they met after work, they often went to the local pub, where she was surrounded by male colleagues. Both Carol and Karen tried to allay his fears, but his constant questions about what she did when he wasn't around put a wedge between them. Almost a year later, Carol found herself a nice doctor, and Matt was left alone again. Meanwhile, his business was going well. His services were in demand, and when the couple developed a system to compete with the Cisco router, it was Matt they called on to write the technical documentation. This brought him back to Cambridge. For some time, he thought about returning home. He took a trip to look at his house and found that the grass was waist-high and his car was being dismantled for parts in the front yard. He realized that he could not live there alone and decided to evict the tenants and sell the house. His clients, John and Mary Prentice, were so pleased with Matt's work that they invited him to dinner as a token of their appreciation upon completion of the job. John Prentice called Matt with an invitation. "Matt, Mary and I would like to treat you to dinner on Friday as a thank you for a job well done. That's very kind of you, John, but it's really not necessary. No, we want to do this, John insisted. The fact is that Mary loves to dance, and the restaurant has a dance floor. She doesn't want to leave you alone, so she invited a partner for you. I hope this suits you. Matt laughed. Don't worry, John. I'm already used to what people try to arrange have a date. This has been happening since I got divorced. May I know who this unfortunate lady is? Mrs. Anstey's, our administrative manager. I think you'll like it. She is a wonderful woman, and like you, she is divorced. Matt knew there was no point in arguing, so on Friday night he found himself at the restaurant, waiting for his hosts. He recognized her without even seeing her face. She had snuck up behind John Prentice and was now standing with her back to him. Her hair, the shape of her body, the curve of her hips, everything told Matt that it was Jenny Chekinger's coat in the wardrobe. It was then that he remembered that Anstey's was Jenny's maiden name. She went into the bar and recognized a smile shone in his direction. Matt suddenly felt very uncomfortable. He saw his owners about to enter the bar. Panic gripped him. Jenny, I don't know what to do. To avoid embarrassing our hosts, perhaps we should act as if we don't know each other. Jenny looked disappointed, but just looked at him. Okay, she said. John and Mary entered the bar, and John quickly made introductions. They ordered drinks. During dinner, the conversation mostly revolved around the company's products and plans for the future. Mary noticed that Jenny seems detached from the conversation. She decided to end the business conversation and began asking Matt about himself and why there was no woman next to him. I guess after the divorce I just didn't meet the right girl, or maybe the problem is me. I find it very difficult to trust people. Sometimes, Jenny said, we hurt those we love and never see the harm we do. Well, I can't believe this applies to you, Jenny, John said. You would be surprised, John, she replied. Matt looked at her, listening to every word she said. He then looked at her hands and noticed that she was still wearing the engagement ring he bought her years ago. You wear your wedding ring, Mrs. Anstey's. Is there a reason for this? He asked. Mary gave him a murderous look. It's just to keep the office wolves away, isn't it, Jenny? Mary suggested. Jenny looked at Mary. Well, that's partly true, Mary, but mostly it's a reminder of how stupid I was. I had a husband who was the most kind, generous, and loving man. We had a good life, and I threw it all away for a little adventure. Mary looked at her in surprise. Jenny noticed this and continued. Oh, I know, Mary, you thought I should be the one who was wronged, but it was my dear husband who was wronged. I had an affair with his best friend. Can you believe it? The two people he trusted most betrayed him. I hate myself for what I did to him. But there must have been something wrong in your marriage, Mary said. No, it was not. My husband was even better in bed, but his friend had the gift of persuasion. He kept telling me that my husband would never know, and it was so exciting to do something you know you shouldn't do. There was always a hint of danger, a chance that we might get caught. At least that's how it all started. After a couple of months, I started fantasizing about my husband storming into the room and taking me home, but that never happened. The irony was that the day I finished the novel, he left me. He knew this almost from the very beginning. He knew for almost a year before he did anything. Why? Mary saw her attempt at matchmaking sink. He told his friend that he was waiting for me to admit what I had done and ask for forgiveness, but of course I never did. With every week, with every piece of evidence he collected, his heart broke more and more. By the time he left, he had no love left. I killed all the love he had for me. You know, I always told him that I needed time for myself to be on my own. Well, now I have plenty of it, and I don't like it. Oh my God, Jenny, this is such a sad story. What happened to him? Asked Mary. John looked at Matt, expecting him to be bored. Instead, he saw Matt listening intently to every word Jenny said. The last time I saw him was about a week after he left. He looked blank and told me he didn't love me anymore. Since then, I haven't seen him again. I was told that he moved to Tewksbridge. He paid my treatment at the clinic, but I never saw him again. What would you say to your husband if you saw him now? Matt asked suddenly. Jenny looked straight at him. I would tell him that I was sorry and that I never meant to hurt him. I would tell him that I love him and that he is the only man I have ever loved. I would beg him to forgive me, even though I know he could never take me back. Now, if you'll excuse me. Tears glistened in her eyes as she stood up and hurried to the women's room. Tears began to form in Matt's eyes as well. Well, that was unexpected, John said. I'm so sorry, Matt. I didn't think all this would come out, Mary said. Actually, don't worry. Obviously, she needed to get it out, and what beautiful breasts she has, Matt smiled. John and Mary decided to cut the evening short, so when Jenny returned, they all got ready to leave. While they were waiting for their coats, Matt turned to Jenny. I really enjoyed myself tonight, Jenny. Can I see you again? Yes, Matt, I would really like that. While John and Mary looked on in amazement, Matt handed Jenny his business card. Jenny took a pen out of her purse, wrote her number on the back of the business card, and handed it back to him. As they left, Matt wondered how long he should wait before calling her. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.